Why don't you have a ham radio license? I posted this on my community tab on YouTube 8 days ago. It says, why don't you have your ham radio license yet? Genuine question. I would like to honestly know what the reason is you have for not getting licensed. If you aren't interested, that's a valid reason. If it's something else, I would like to hear your thoughts below. And you can see right here, I put in 3 different multiple choice answers. Okay, the first one says, I don't have the time, and 75% of you said you don't have the time. I understand that, and I think it's a legitimate answer because during COVID, when everyone was stuck at home, we saw a big spike in the number of people getting licensed. Yes, some of that was a scare tactic because we like, oh, is the world coming into an end? We don't know. But a lot of it was because people were just at home and had more time to study and take online practice tests. Okay, about 16% of you said you had no interest at all. Okay, no problem. It's not for everybody. And about 9% of you said you had a bad experience with another ham radio operator. I honestly thought that, and I said comment below in the multiple choice option. I honestly thought that one would get more attention because of all the comments I've been getting on other videos when I talk about ham radio clubs and et cetera and whatnot. But I picked out, if you can see right here, it's got 120 comments in the last 8 days. Okay, and all these comments, I've tried to reply to almost all of these, or at least give a thumbs up to almost all of these. I just want you to know that I read those from you. So I appreciate you guys who answered. We're going to go through 5 or 6 of them right now. Now, if you've gotten your ham radio license and you want to get into HF, a couple of you are talking about HF in the responses. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But I highly recommend that you go check out Mezzi and Ploney Coax at the link in the description below. You can save a 10% discount on all M&P Coax cables, connectors, adapters, tools, everything in their inventory. You can save a 10% discount with the coupon code of HR2Cables. Check the link in the description below, and thank you, Mezzi and Ploney, for supporting this channel. So this one right here kind of speaks to the last multiple choice option I had on the list. It says, after my horrible experiences, I reached out to a few ham clubs to donate my setup for new hams or hams without an HF setup, and no one was interested. The hobby is very clicky and just tired of it. And I responded to him and I said, sorry this happened to you. This is not typical at all. I honestly thought that we would get more answers like that because of comments I've gotten from numerous people, you guys, some of you guys, on multiple videos I've recorded. You know, I talked about the ham radio clubs a while back. I talked about being on repeaters a while back. I thought that more people would be like, well, I tried it and it just seems too clicky. This is really kind of the only answer that used the word clicky or clickish or uninviting. There were a couple of people that talked about ham radio clubs being uninviting, but the question was not about ham radio clubs. The original question was, why don't you have a ham radio license? And joining a ham radio club is certainly a good idea. And I am still working on a list of good ham radio clubs across the USA. If you have had experience with a good ham radio club in your area, I want to hear about it. I want to know what the name of the club is, what their website is, Facebook page, contact information, anything that you've got about that ham radio club that you have personally experienced. Not something you heard about or your dad went to or something like that, but that you have personally experienced. Email clubs@hamradio2.com. I'm putting together a list. It's taking me a little bit longer than I anticipated it would, but I'm working on that with Scott, Ham Radio for Non-Techies. He's a webmaster, web designer. He's putting together a page for me, and then I'm going to make it public. So we'll be able to check that out soon. But if you have any good information about clubs, email me, clubs@hamradio2.com. But you don't necessarily have to be a part of a ham radio club to get a license, okay? And here's a good example of that. This is actually one of the first responses that I got to this question. W9JCR, thank you very much for your response here. He says, I have mine now. In other words, he has his license now. Local clubs were not historically inviting. I would tend to agree with that. They have gotten better, and I would tend to agree with that too. However, I found that my place in this YouTube crowd, Jason, Josh, Mike, T.O., and everyone else around them drove me to get my license. I thoroughly blame them for my POTA addiction, LOL. Okay, hey, great. I'm glad to be in that boat. Thank you very much for commenting. My comment was awesome. EEM3III commented and said, I agree 100%. And Old Wolf 1928 said, I also agree 100%. Nearest club didn't want to help me because I lived too far, 40 miles. So I went to YouTube University, also dropped my club membership, but help anyone that asks. Okay, good. So we've talked about this before. There's a lot of people who don't like YouTube. You've heard the story, YouTube's killing ham radio. Oh my God. I personally think uninviting clubs or cliquish clubs or something along those lines are what's actually killing ham radio. And quite frankly, nothing's killing ham radio because ham radio is growing. Okay, so don't be fooled by the whole, it's killing ham radio. If ham radio was dying, then sure. I got a whole nother video about that, about how ham radio is actually not dying. We're actually doing pretty good, okay? But we need to be more inviting in our clubs, but we need to be more inviting as individual people also. Again, this video is not really about clubs. It's about getting licensed, but people were commenting on clubs, and I think these were some of the better comments that I got. This one right here kind of falls into those lines. I got my ticket, general even, but my experience has been for every person I've met I like being around, there are 3 I don't want near me. And I take that to mean that he's just not a people person, which is, I get that. I get that. I get the whole not being a people person, I get. In a crowd, I don't really like crowds. I don't like going to ball games and whatnot. I tell my wife that. She's like, but you love going to Hamfest. I'm like, yeah, well, those are my people, though. So, I don't know. It's just kind of one of those things. I get that. Okay, that's cool. Okay, but on the radio, you don't have to meet people face to face. I mean, you can watch a YouTube video and comment or not comment. You can talk on the radio. You can do a POTA activation. You can get on the repeater and you can talk or you can listen. You can do whatever you want to. So you don't necessarily have to be in a crowd in order to get a ham radio license. But then you've got that tool in your tool belt if you ever need it. The next one says, right here, says, started an aggressive study routine about a year ago. Never got to the point where I thought I could pass. Became frustrated and decided to take a break and was going to look for other study alternatives. Have yet to get back into it. And my response to him was, well, there's multiple ways to study. So some of you commented on this post and said that, in fact, I think we're going to talk about one of those here in a minute. Some of you commented and said that the studying is too hard. There's too many people who just memorize the questions and answers. They don't actually learn the material. You know what? People study in different ways. I have talked about Ham Radio Prep on this channel before. Okay, Ham Radio Prep's one of the sponsors of this channel. They're not sponsoring this specific video, but you can save a 20% discount on their courses with the coupon code of Jason20. You can also download their app for free. You can get a free app from Ham Radio Prep and get started today. You don't have to pay anything at all. There's another course called Ham Study. Ham Study's free online, but they have a paid app. The app is like $2.99. It's a one-time fee. It's not a big deal. There are courses on my YouTube channel. Believe me, I would rather you go watch the courses on my YouTube channel, okay? We did 2 different technician courses last year. One is a long, drawn-out course that explains questions and answers and why answers are the way they are. And another course is a no-nonsense study guide done by Dan Romanchik, KB6NU, where he just teaches you the bare minimum of what you need to know to pass the test. Dan's perception on that is that you start learning when you get on the radio. In fact, I've had some people that said, is there like a course that you can take for after you get licensed? Because a lot of the stuff in the test is not taught to you about how to tune a radio, how to do this. I'm actually looking at doing something like that myself. I'm going to call it the Ham Radio 2.0 Boot Camp. If you want more information about that, put a comment below. But there's no wrong way to learn, okay? If you're the type of person that learns, just want to memorize everything, get on the air, do that. If you want to know all the answers and why, the reason why behind all the answers, do that. I have both of those options on this channel. You can get an app, Ham Radio Prep or Ham Study. There's a multitude of other ways. You can take free practice tests on ARRL. You can take free practice tests on QRZ.com, on eham.net. AA9PW has a free practice test. I really like the AA9PW because it goes through and tells you what you missed at the end of the test. Some of them do that and some of them don't. There are a lot more than just the ones I just named. There's a multitude of courses and study materials online and places to get material online. There's stuff all over YouTube. A lot of the YouTubers have technician, general, and extra courses on their channels. So go study and get your license if it's something you're interested in. There's not a wrong way to do it, and don't let anyone tell you that there is. Okay, this next one I thought was... This is a good comment. This is a good comment, and it's not what I was expecting to see. So we're going to read this comment real quick. Matt's Choice Reviews 1322. Okay, thank you, Matt, for commenting. He says, I have a mix of two. Again, the question is, why have you not gotten licensed? He says, I have a mix of two. My first time, this is never enough time anyway. Yeah, I get bits time here and there. I study a bit. I also did have a bad experience with an apparent ham outside of a store. So this guy's got a GMRS radio in his truck. We'll read about that. Across the street from a ham fest, I went in to buy something. On my way out of the store, a guy saw my radio and said, "Oh, are you coming or going to the ham fest?" He then said he didn't recognize the radio I had. It was a GM30, Radio Oddity GM30, a GMRS radio. And he asked what my call sign was. And as soon as he realized that I wasn't a ham, he began to say things that made people look at me like I had hit his car in the parking lot or something, and found out I had no insurance. It was instant. He literally yelled at me for an interest in the hobby and looking at radio gear. Okay, this surprises me. This honestly surprises me because at a ham fest, most people are welcoming and inviting. So this guy must have just had a bad day. I don't know who this person is. He doesn't name the guy in his comment. I'm sorry that happened to you. It is atypical of ham fest, especially the larger shows. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of people in all kinds of walks of life, okay? So don't let that one doofus ruin it for you. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, because that is atypical of most people at hamfests, in my experience. And it's not just because I go to hamfests and people recognize me. I've been going to hamfests for 25 years before I ever had a YouTube channel. Okay, so I would go to hamfest. Some people were kind of old man standoffish, and some people were very nice and inviting. So there's all kinds of people out there. The last paragraph says, "I'm not totally put off about getting a ticket, but few people have made it seem like you need to be a horrible person in order to fit in. I can guarantee that's not true. Most people at Hamfest are very nice. Even occurs on Facebook and GMRS groups." Okay, I said something about disparaging about Facebook in a previous video last week, and I stand by that point. Facebook is just or can be a cesspool. Some of your Facebook groups can be a cesspool of rude people. Doesn't really matter what the subject of the Facebook group is. He says, "Yeah, I often ask, why can't all radio people get along? What is so wrong about someone having a starting point? We all do the same thing. Many of us talk to people we don't know on a repeater or simplex in the neighborhood. I encourage it with certain limits. Even my kids talk FRS with some neighbor kids. My son has considered getting his ham license with me, but I really have seen some ugly sides of the ham and GMRS sides. It is sad." I would agree with you. I think that I've seen a lot of GMRS guys bad-mouthing hams. GMRS guys tend to, these are guys online. I've never talked to anybody rude on the GMRS repeater, okay? But online, some of these GMRS groups, these guys will talk bad about hams, and I'm like, well, why do you say that? "Oh, well, all hams are rude." I'm like, literally, you're being rude right now. Why do you think hams are such bad people, and then you turn around and do the same thing? Kind of makes you wonder. Makes me wonder anyway, I don't know. But yes, this commenter is certainly correct. Why can't we all just get along? You do have a starting point. Everyone's got a starting point. Everyone's got somewhere they started. GMRS, I started in CB radio. Okay, so GMRS, CB radio, FRS, whatever, Marine Band radio. Maybe your father was a ham radio operator and you got into it at an early age. That's great. Everyone started somewhere. It doesn't matter. We should all be nice and welcoming to one another. And there's no excuse for acting like this guy acted outside of this ham fest. This next one, kind of, I consider not including this one because I've heard this before numerous times, okay? Free men don't ask permission to speak. Okay. And my response to him, "This is a common claim amongst people who must have such easy lives that they are just looking for things to complain about. If you ever decide you want to do some actual research, let me know. I would love to help you." So I tried to be blunt, but also helpful to him. I have a whole video about this. Okay, I have a whole video about First Amendment rights, freedom of speech versus ham radio. That's not what it's called. I'll link it somewhere in here. You guys can go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. I don't want to dive deep into this specific comment on this video you're watching right now, but I will say this, okay? I said this in my First Amendment video as well. I find it odd that people want to talk about how not being on the radio is a violation of your freedom of speech. It's not, by the way. You can say anything you want to. You don't have the right, I don't have the right, to be on the police and fire department frequency. I don't have the right to be on a government frequency. I don't have the right to be on a commercial frequency that a business down the road has paid for. Because you can buy your own commercial frequencies on the UHF band, usually, sometimes 900 megahertz. I don't have a right to be on their frequency that they have paid for. There are free band frequencies out there, CB radio, GMRS, Marine, some of the Marine band stuff. Not GMRS, FRS. CB, FRS, Marine band. So there are options out there that you don't have to pay for. The whole asking permission thing is kind of, I find that as a cop-out. I find it as a cop-out because you don't have permissions to talk on police, fire, EMS, or commercial frequencies unless you're part of those programs. Same thing goes for ham radio. Same thing goes for GMRS radio. This one was pretty good. I read this and I'm like, I can't tell if he's being honest or being funny, but it was a good comment either way. He says, the plumbing license was easier than the ham test, so I became a plumber instead of a radio operator. I'm not sure I agree with that. I've never taken a plumbing license test, but I'm not sure I agree with that either way. However, William K4ARX replies, interesting. My cousin passed both, self-employed, built and sold my house, very active ham hunter, and before Silent Key, almost obtained pilot's license. Kids were grown, of course. Priorities first. Then the wives, 3 conclusively. They mostly disagreed. I guess he's talking about his cousin. Yeah, okay. I replied and I said, I got my amateur radio license, so it can't be that hard, and I stand by that statement. If I can do it, you guys can do it for sure. I don't know about the plumbing test. Maybe I should try it. And then this next comment says, it could be a financial rewards thing. Plumbing license helps you earn money. Ham license does the opposite if one has no self-control. Profession versus hobby. And I said, boy, is it that true. Yeah. So that's good. I don't know if this guy was serious about the plumbing test or not, but I thought that was a funny comment, so I included it in today. But if you didn't see that, again, I got 120 comments. I only read you like 5 or 6 of them. And a lot of you commented about the lack of time. I had a couple more comments about rude experiences with other ham radio operators. And again, I thought I would hear more of those stories, honestly. I didn't hear as many of those stories as what I was expecting to, which is good. That's a good thing. I'm glad that there's not more people out there being rude to non-ham radio operators. What do you think? If you don't have a ham radio license and you didn't answer this poll that I put out, I would like you to put a comment in this video below. And for whatever reason, YouTube thinks that you want to watch these videos next. So go check those out, and thanks for being with us today.